Welcome to Inspirational Attorneys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison Barnes, and today my special guest is Melony Teague. Welcome to the show, Melony.
Thank you so much, Anne.
Okay, so first of all, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I was born in South Africa, and in 1999 we immigrated, my husband and I immigrated to Canada, and now we have two Canadian children. They're teenagers, and I've been a freelance writer for about 10 years now. And about 3 years ago, I decided to set aside a few of my clients so that I could concentrate more on my fiction work. And so that's what I do. I'm pretty much a writer full time.
You sound like me. I've only got one freelance writing client, but I love writing fiction too, although mine's mysteries. So what inspired you to become a writer?
Well, it's an interesting story because I really should have known that it was in the genes a long time ago. Because I was always a very good letter writer because my grandmother, I grew up with my grandmother, and she was a good letter writer. Every week, faithfully, she would write letters to her friends all over the country. And I got some pen pals. I had a pen pal in Taiwan, and I had some local pen pals, in the country. And I loved to write letters. So that was the first thing that I did. Then when I was in elementary school, we had a project to do a magazine. We had to lay it out, do little articles and everything. And everybody else's magazine thing was tiny, like, a few millimeters thick. Mine was an inch thick. I really took that project seriously, and I loved every minute of it. So I kind of should have known. Anyway, so later on, in high school, I loved English. I loved English literature, and I had an incredible English teacher. And she encouraged me to do studies on Shakespeare and Chaucer, and I entered a few speech contests to do with that. So really, my love of storytelling has always been there. So then fast forward, as I said, we immigrated and everything, and I had a family, and I was at a party. The kids were sort of small, but I was at a party, and it was with quite a lot of distinguished people, in the art field, interior designers and authors and movie producers and all sorts of, really famous people. And one of the ladies said that she'd just published a book, and I said, oh, I'd love to do that, And they kind of looked at me as if to say, yeah, right. We hear that a lot, but, So I kind of took it as a challenge. I thought, what? You're saying I can't do it? So,
Yep.
So I was like, no, don't tell me I can't do something. So that's when I decided I wanted to get into writing. And so what I did was I drained every library in the vicinity of all the books about writing. I read E.B. White's Letters to E.B. White, and all the books I could read on writing, and all of them
On
said,
writing by Stephen King.
yeah. And also a lot of them said, start getting to write in your community. So start collecting those rejection letters so that when you eventually build up your portfolio and you do get accepted, you've got some writing chops behind you. So what I did was I submitted an article to my local newspaper, hoping to start collecting these rejection letters. And lo and behold, she accepted it. And I was like, oh.
Wow. Amazing.
Amazing. So my first article in my local newspaper was published in July 2010. And once you see your words in print, really, there's no going back after that. So the rest is pretty much history. Then I started doing volunteer work in the community, doing biographies. And, I as much as my husband would like me to be the next J.K. Rowling, my first love was human interest stories, nonfiction stories, real people stories.
Oh my gosh.
The first project I started doing was interviewing people who had adopted children from China, and I just loved hearing their stories. So as my interest developed, I realized that, that was what I wanted to do. So I started getting clients and doing communications for various missions organizations and, you know, that sort of thing. So, but later on, as you know, I worked with such diverse subject matter. You know, it always keeps my interest because each new project is a different thing. It's a new thing. It's about a different subject or a different person or whatever. But about 3 years ago, I decided I really wanted to start writing my own fiction stories. And I love so many stories that inspire me, that help me to escape from my stressful life. And they make me laugh. And there are a few hours of entertainment, but they also challenge me. So I thought I want to write a book that will do the same for other people, that will inspire them, make them laugh, entertain them, and also inspire them at the same time. So that's where I started, and my book came out last week, called The Promise to Keep. And,
right, you sound so much like me. I mean, mine's slightly different, but I went from freelance, started fiction, then I went from freelance when I got my computer, and then into fiction. So that you know, and I think that's you know, part of the community. That just sounds so much like me, honestly. So tell me a little bit about A Promise to Keep. I know I'm reading it, but still, tell the listeners about it for those who don't know what it is.
Okay, so A Promise to Keep is about a research librarian called Savannah Sanderson, and she wants nothing more than to escape into her happily ever after novels. But a promise to her late husband has her attending her 20-year high school reunion. And then Michael McCann, who's the hero in the story, was once a reckless troublemaker. But now he's back at the reunion, and he's back to face a few of his memories and unresolved issues, which, namely Savannah, is one of the unresolved issues that he had. And before the night's over, a pact between these two friends leads them on an adventure of uncharted emotional territory, where Michael must confront his past regrets and find courage to reveal the truth. But can Savannah fly from her sheltered nest and risk her heart on a real-life hero? So they have to go on a journey where they resolve their past issues and find the courage to make a brand new future together.
So what was the inspiration for this book?
Well, it's interesting you should ask, because given my background of being a journalist and freelance writer, I get a lot of inspiration from real-life news. So when I started writing this in 2018, there was a few news reports about rescues that, you know, people were glued to their TV watching. And I was inspired by the mindset of the rescuers. They said, you know, we're not heroes. We just do what needs to be done, and we calculate the risks, and then we do what we have to do. And everyone else wanted to romanticize them as heroes and, you know, reckless heroes, but they're not. They're actually the complete opposite. They make their decisions based on the risks and the facts, and they're very calm, cool-headed, and that inspired me because, you know, the reality of what their position is so different to what we think, the romanticized, glorified version of a rescuer. So that just really inspired me. And also I wanted to take readers on a journey to Canada, somewhere in Canada. So I wanted the readers to go to Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake and you know, see that area through the character's eyes. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
I love it too, because I've in my mystery that I've written but re-editing, I take my character on a journey. But the thing is, I love, and I don't know why this is, but I've always loved to read stories about travel, whether it's fiction or non-fictional accounts. And that's what I love about the book. You take us on a journey. It's like you're with the characters. Mm-hmm. Did you have to go and visit some of these places in order to write about the journey, or how did you do the research for that?
Well, in 2018, we packed everyone in the car, my two teenagers, my husband and myself, and we drove down to Niagara Falls, and we walked around the falls, and we went to the journey behind the falls, which was a little scary for me because I'm slightly claustrophobic, which you will find out in the book. I portray pretty well in the book because that's how I feel when I'm in enclosed spaces.
Yeah, I am too.
But yeah, we walked around Niagara Falls. I got the feel of the place. I had been before, but when the children were little. This time it was a research trip, and I was really paying attention to what was going on around me. So yes, and our friend Google Earth is very, very good for visiting places that you can't, readily hop over the border to go and see. But the town of Point that the high school reunion is at is a fictional town. It doesn't actually exist.
Yeah,
exist. It's there's many, many little towns just like it in the U.S. in upstate New York. So.
Right, I love creating towns that are so similar to mine or similar to other towns I've been to. So now I'm curious. Now I don't know about whether the listeners would be, and I don't want to spoil this too much, but I'm curious about how you came up with the idea for so the Savannah being the librarian. Is that an aspect of your life or observations? What inspired that particular her?
Well, I needed a character that was directly opposite to Michael. And a research librarian is somebody that helps people research their ancestry. If they come to the library and they need to get to the archives, they help them, find out what they need to know. They also, know their resource material, so their reference materials. If somebody comes in wanting to research a certain subject, they need to know, what's available, where they can get the information, and they need to know what is in the archives as well. So I find that fascinating because if I'm doing research, that's the person I'm going to. Other than people in the actual field. For instance, I had a firefighter, a local firefighter who I consulted with for the rescue scenes. And having one-on-one interaction with somebody in the field gives you so much more of a sense of reality of what they face.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than what you think they might do, they would say, oh no, we have to put, because of their training, there's so many things that go into a decision that we might not really realize. So, I mean, you can't always find that in a book or in a resource. So, So to answer your question, I love books, I love history, I love resources. So who else? And somebody that needs to be opposite to Michael, so that then I just came up with a research librarian.
I see, yeah. And she sounds like she's an introvert too.
A little bit, yes. I think life will tune her down a bit, so she's become afraid, and that's part of what she has to overcome in the book.
Right. So so aside from this book, do you have any new projects in the works?
Well, the reviews are coming in, and I'm very pleased with what the readers are enjoying about the book. But quite a few of them said we want the story about two of the secondary characters. I don't want to tell you who they are because that would be a big spoiler. But so I'm working on the second book now.
You can tell me about the secondary characters after we get done with the interview.
Sure.
I probably can guess, but I'm not going to go there. Because this is actually interesting because I like the sweet romance and the travel side of that. And so do you have any tips for aspiring authors?
I would say to develop a habit for writing. One of the things that really helped me is that I started off, as I said, as a young girl, writing letters. And then, of course, the internet happened, and then I started blogging. And once you get into the habit of every day sitting down at your computer and doing your blog, it becomes a habit. And that's the same thing that you need to cultivate in your writing. You can't wait until you feel like writing. You have to develop a habit. And once you're in a habit, you have that momentum to keep going. The other thing is perseverance. the writing life is so full of ups and downs that if you don't stick with it and you push through those things that you might not like or enjoy, like writing a synopsis, then your dreams won't come true. You have to have, as much as we all think that writing has to do with talent, it doesn't. It has to do with discipline and learning your skill and practicing your craft and sticking with it. That is the most important thing. Because there's many writers out there that are super, super talented, but they don't have the discipline to sit down and finish that book.
And not only that, and I'm asking you if you agree with this, but I've given listeners before this bit of advice. And you guys, if you haven't heard this podcast yet, you're going to want to go back and listen to this, because I'm telling you now, you not only have to have the discipline to do it and put your writing first, but you also need to trust your process. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you completely. When I started writing, my first fiction foray into fiction was NaNoWriMo in 2010. And now that manuscript will never see the light of day.
Right, I know, I started in 2014.
So anyway, I was a total pantser. So I wrote by the seat of my pants. And I realized as I went on and wrote a few more manuscripts that I couldn't do that. It was too much work to go back and fix everything afterwards. So I became a hybrid, where now I'm a plantster.
Me too! Girl, we have more, Melony, we have more in common than I even realized, because now I started out as a pantser, now I'm a plantser, because I write my bare bones plot line for a story.
Well, it kind of makes sense. If you're a freelance writer, you have clients who need certain things from whatever you're writing, and they give you write from spec. And I'm thinking, why don't I do that for a book? Like, why am I trying to pants it when I could sit down, write down what I want to happen, what my themes are, what conflict and what my characters need to go through, and write out the synopsis first and save myself all the headache later on. Now, I will say the pantsing part comes within that structure. So once you have the structure, you can be creative within it. And I think
sure. Now for me, and I'm going to ask you this too, because I'm curious now, because now you and I have found out that we have a lot in common when it comes to our writing. Sometimes I get my ideas in dreams, and it may not be a lot, but I just see one scene and then it blossoms from there and I can write the bare bones there. But sometimes the scene that I'm writing or editing is so vivid, I can actually picture myself as if I'm in that, like, for example, in that car with a specific character. Does that happen with you, or is your process different? Just tell me about your process. I'm curious now.
Well, I think that I have a vivid imagination. So, and I'm also very intuitive emotionally. So, you don't have to go back. You know how when you're editing somebody else's work, you have to keep going back and saying, well, how does the character feel?
Right.
I don't have that problem. I feel with the characters.
Oh, I know.
So it's like I'm living with the character through these instances. So the thing is, I can see a scene more vividly if I've done my research. If in my mind the scene is hazy and there's ambiguity, then I can't see the scene as clearly. I have to do the background work. I have to look at pictures of the scenery. I have to look at, Google Earth is fantastic for that. You can walk up and down streets of places that you can't get to physically. Or books or watch YouTube videos about the same subject. That once I've got the background and the research cemented, then I can use my imagination to say, okay, well, how would the characters then react in that situation? Because I'm very character driven. I have to get to know my characters first, and then once I know them, then I know how they will react within the plot.
Have you ever thought about, and this is what I do, But have you ever thought about doing character interviews like for your blog and asking your characters questions?
Well, not formally. Although I did do one for my blog tour last week, and it was so much fun. My
Yes.
characters snuck off without me and were interviewed for one of these blog posts, and it was so much fun.
Gosh, I know, and
But
I would encourage you to do that more because people love that stuff. I wrote a character conversation, and this is just me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. All right.
So I was saying that, beforehand, I will have a rough guide of the characters. So not so much what they look like, because I think every reader is going to picture the character different. I kind of have a picture in my mind of what I think. For example, Michael McCann is based off Henry Cavill with long hair.
Wow.
But his character and his personality is different, of course.
Of course.
But so I have an idea of what they look like, but most of all, I really have a sense of what their character traits are like, what their priorities are like, what their wounds are like, what is their backstory, what wounds cause them to be reluctant to do certain things. For example, one of the characters is scared of, she has claustrophobia because her brother locked her in a closet when she was a kid. So there's a bit of backstory there, and that translates into how she reacts in the rescue situation.
Oh, wow. But I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt a minute ago, but what I was going to say was people actually love the character interviews because I did a character conversation between two different characters from two different books that I'm working on, and I actually got a reblog. So yeah, I would suggest that you may want to, to help get to know your character. I mean, it's up to you. It's what your process is, but I'm just throwing that nugget out. And listeners, you guys that, I remember how I told you about character interviews and listening to your characters? That's another tip for your toolbox. Take the time, allow your characters, even if it's from two different books, allow your characters to talk to one another and put that out there on the page, because you don't know how much engagement you're going to get from that. You really don't know how much engagement, because and you don't know how you're going to affect your readers. That's a magnet. That's a way to draw your readers in. So, are you a heavy
It's a good point,
outliner?
because...
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say that's a really good point, because once readers connect with a character, then they want to read their story. That's the most important thing in the first chapter of your book, I believe, is to make your reader care. If your reader doesn't care about that character, they're not going to read the rest of the book. So to me, it's very important that readers care. So your next question?
Okay. So do you heavily outline, or do you just do your plotting in like bare bones, like I'd like in a journal?
Well, what I do is I kind of write out a synopsis, but I can't really write out the synopsis until I've written the first 1 or 2 chapters, because I need it takes the first 1 or 2 chapters for me to know where the story starts, what the conflicts are, and what the jumping off point is, and whether the characters are going to cooperate with that or not. They don't always do. And also I get to know their voices. So once I know their voices, then I kind of jump to synopsis, but I can't do the synopsis until I've done my research. Then that's when I put my characters in scenarios and see how they'll react. And so it's a lot of brainstorming and working through that. Once I've done that, then I do the synopsis. And the synopsis is fairly detailed. It's about 3 to 4, maybe 5 pages, but not necessarily set in stone. For example, when I did my synopsis for A Promise to Keep, Donovan Radcliffe wasn't in the book.
Right.
He showed up on his own.
I was about to ask.
So,
So,
you know, sometimes
go ahead.
yeah, so he showed up on his own and he demanded a spot in the story. And I love him because he's such a good friend and he's so mysterious and so, you know, he has a backstory too. But yeah, I enjoy, as I said before, the structure keeps me on track so I don't go off on a tangent. But at the same time, I have the freedom to let characters do their thing.
And I was about to ask you, what do you do when the character decides you've got them in a synopsis? Well, first of all, before I go there, do you use the 3-act story structure, or do you have your own set structure that you go by?
Well, this is a difficult thing because I'm not a logical person. My husband, poor man, has been married to me for 20 years, and he knows there's not a logical bone in my body. But for me to be so logically structured like that doesn't come naturally to me. So I really have to work at trying to get that. I think for me, I'm more of an intuitive storyteller. And I know what works in story. Having been a freelance writer, I know about hooks. You have to grab the reader, and I know about ending chapters on a note that makes them want to turn the page. So using that and kind of figuring out roughly what needs to happen when, that's how I work. And probably by the end of the process, if you came back and put it up against the 3-act structure, it would probably match up. I just can't do it intentionally because it's too I guess rigid.
Too stilted, yeah. You put them in a box. But no, I was just saying, because the reason I say that, I've learned about the 3-act story structure. I don't use it heavily to plot, but I do. I have my points to think about, especially as in my revision. Okay, so this needs to go here instead of there to make it work. It's kind of like I kind of have an idea of a roadmap sort of thing, but I don't really have a full roadmap. There are twists and turns that come along the way. Now, the question I was going to ask you was, so what do you do when your characters don't stick inside that synopsis you created? Do you change it
like
as you go?
Showing up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, you run with it and you see where it goes, and if it fits, you keep it. So what happened in the first version of the draft, I had seen the axe throwing scene. I don't know if you read that one yet, but I had to take it out because of the submission word count. So I took it out, but I felt that it highlighted quite a important part of Savannah's struggle. So when I resubmitted it to another publisher and they accepted it and the word count wasn't an issue, that scene went straight back in because I was then allowed to develop certain character traits that I didn't have the word count for before. So the first draft of the manuscript was 58,000 words. By the time we published the book, it was 80,000 words. It was a full-grown, fully developed story.
I'm on chapter 13, so I'm probably not even there yet.
So part of the thing is allowing your characters to develop where they need to develop.
Right. Oh my gosh. I could tell you a story, and I told this to listeners before, but I'm working on a series, and I don't know if you've done the you're going to work on the. I know you said you're going to work on the second book. I don't know if this is going to be a series or not, but I had a prequel that I was working on. I started working on after I published A Journey of Faith, and as I was editing A Journey of Faith, and I was going to publish the prequel later after I got the 2 books out. I was editing this book, and all of a sudden I was listening to podcasts the other night, and I'm like, I need to know my character's backstory because it's crucial to the editing of the book that's there. So I'm going to have to, and I don't know if you've had, well, you may, and if you find yourself doing this, it doesn't hurt. I'm going to reiterate that. It doesn't hurt to backtrack, but I'm going to have to do a little backtracking. That's why I said trust the process, because sometimes your characters will wind up telling you things that you weren't expecting. Am I right or am I right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I had a challenge with is in the first draft, I was so paranoid. You know how editors tell you not to give too much backstory
Right.
because it slows down the story, all that stuff. So
And you
I
hear
was
it
so
all the time.
paranoid about that I didn't put in any backstory.
Oh my gosh! I know I did the same thing.
And then, so what I did was this, when we started developmental edits and content edits, I was able to put in all of that stuff that I left out of fear that editors
Yeah.
it slowed the story down. So finding the balance between, the inner monologue, the characters thinking and processing, and of course a little bit of backstory is a very tricky balance. And that's one of the things that new writers really struggle with. So, having a good editor to go through and tell you, well, I need to know more about what this character is thinking. How did he get from this process to this process? Help me connect the dots. So having a good editor is essential.
Having beta readers is essential for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because my friend Jen, she was I put my story up in her group, and she was telling me, she was asking me questions to make me think. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
having a good editor and a good beta reader and good beta readers is really key for that, because they can tell you, because you're so close to your work, they can tell you things that they don't know about your characters. You do, but the reader doesn't. So they can, it helps to have other people to see your work and to have that community.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Writing a book is not a single process. You have to have a tribe around you. You have to have your beta readers. You have to have your critique partners. You have to have editors. You have to have cheerleaders who, talk you off ledges when you think that you can't do it anymore.
Oh yeah.
They're not necessarily writers, but they understand what you're going through. Those people are essential. It's a job that you do behind a computer on your own, and if you don't have a community to support you, it's very difficult. So you need to get in contact with other writers, join writing guilds, or like I'm part of ACFW, and really do build up your support system, because you can't do it on your own.
I think I read, and you can correct me, that you're a member of the Christian Fiction Writers.
Yeah, American Christian Fiction Writers.
Ah.
ACFW.
I've heard about them, but I haven't really joined them. I've got my own. My friend has her own Patreon thing that she does, and I'm in there, and I'm in that group, and a few others, but
Mm-hmm.
But it helps to get in with fellow writers and build that community. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you my fun question that I like to ask my my guests. Well, some of them depending on what our subject matter is. But if you could sit down and have a conversation over coffee, or maybe be educated by anyone, past or present, who would that be and why?
Goodness, I really thought long and hard about this. And I can't think of anybody that I'm not already connected to. I have such incredible mentors and authors that I admire, that answer my questions, and help me through things. In the last 3 or 4 years, having writers who are ahead in the process and asking them questions and having little chats, video chats with them, having Facebook message conversations with them has been invaluable. And I can't, my husband is my grounding. He grounds me when I'm in a panic or stressed about something. So I mean, he's here for me. Then I have my daughter, who is my proofreader, and she fixes all my commas, and she cheers me along, and she's amazing. And then I have my writers group. We wrote a devotional together, and they're my prayer support, and they cheer me on. They're nonfiction writers, but they cheer on what I do. So really, I can't think of anyone that I would still need to get in contact with.
Wow, that's amazing, because everybody I've talked to has somebody in there, and that's the first. So you know what? It's whatever your process is that works for you. And I'm curious, because this is so me, but I'm just curious about, because everybody's different.
I guess, and the reason for it is I'm not an introvert. So
see, a lot of writers are. That's what. Okay,
I
that's
want
the difference.
to learn from someone. I reach out to them, and I'm not afraid to do that.
Okay.
So,
Okay. That's the difference then. All right. So we have an extrovert in our midst, y'all. Okay. So and I'm curious, do you like to does music inspire your writing, or
actually, while I was writing the rescue scene, I was listening to a Spotify playlist for suspense, scenes. I can't remember the name of the playlist, but it was something to do with, scary music or intense scenes or whatever. It wasn't sort of calming instrumental stuff. It was, sound, so that helped me get the feel of the anxiety that the characters were feeling. And I think it kind of worked, because a few readers have said that scene, they felt sweaty, and it helped them feel the angst. Other than that, when I'm writing, I can't really write with music, but I can edit with instrumental music in the background, because it switches off that other side of my brain that wants to keep.
Stellar opposite. I am stellar opposite.
So if I go to a coffee shop and put headphones on, I can work. But if I'm sitting at home and I'm trying to work, I get so distracted. I get distracted by the dishwasher and the cats, and I should go do laundry, and maybe I'll just check Facebook for an hour, and I just get too distracted. Whereas if I'm at a coffee shop, or if I have music on and I'm editing, then I don't get as distracted.
Well, I can write with music, but I can't edit with music, because the music distracts me. I mean, I want to dig into the music instead of what I'm doing. That's just me.
I'm not really listening to the music. It's more background noise. It's not very loud.
I love music that much. I mean, that's just me. And I can come up with songs that go with my characters. I'll get a song in my head while I'm working on my writing. So that's just that's my process for you. And so, and everybody's different in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, where can people find you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Melony Teague. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have an author page there, and my website is melonyteague.com.
All right. So, do you have a Bible verse you'd like to share with us today?
I guess what I keep coming back to is Jeremiah. The Lord says, "I know the plans I have for you."
29:11. Yeah.
Yeah, because we often get our eyes off the fact that, our steps are ordered of the Lord. And being a little bit of a control freak, I like to have things planned and ordered and know what's going on. And I can't always control that. So I need to trust that, God's in control, and He has the best in store for me. It may not be the easiest thing to go through, but it's what I need to go through to grow me as a person. As much as us as writers put our characters into conflict to grow their character, same thing with us. Life gives us trials and tribulations, but God is more interested in our character than our comfort.
Right, and I totally agree with that. So, because I keep going back to that verse a lot. So, would you like to close us out in prayer?
Sure. Father God, I thank you for this time together with Anne, and I thank you for the common things we have in our process. And Lord, I just pray for all the writers out there that are listening to this, who are going through challenges in their writing. I pray that you would help them to be inspired, that they would know what their next step is. They don't need to know the next 5 steps. They just need to know the next right step for them. And I pray that you would lead them in that one step ahead. I just pray that they would realize that writing words on the page to inspire people, to perhaps heal inner hurts that they have, is very important. Our stories are important to you, God. And I just pray that they would always know that they're unique, their voice is unique, and only they can tell the story that they need to tell. So I just pray that you would give them peace, that they would have clarity in the days ahead, knowing what to do next, and that they would be inspired most of all to do this for you and for nobody else. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. And before I give my challenge, I still want to thank you for coming on the show. This has absolutely been an awesome conversation.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's been lovely.
Lovely. So we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, rate and subscribe like and rate the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you have any questions for me about anything you've heard on the show, or if you have suggestions for future shows, be sure to contact me. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a blessed day.